The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Buckingham Palace, casting golden rays across the marble floors of the wardrobe department. Sarah Mitchell, a quiet woman in her early 30s with careful hands and an eye for detail, had been working as an assistant to the royal dresser for nearly 8 years. She knew every corner of the vast wardrobe rooms, every silk gown hanging in perfect rows, every ceremonial uniform pressed and waiting for its moment to shine. Today was different, though. The entire palace buzzed with preparation energy that Sarah had never experienced before. After months of planning, the coronation ceremony was just weeks away, and every department worked around the clock to ensure perfection. The weight of history pressed down on everyone's shoulders, knowing that millions of people around the world would be watching every detail unfold. Sarah pushed her wire-rimmed glasses up her nose as she entered the main wardrobe room, her footsteps echoing softly on the polished floor. The room stretched longer than a city block, with ceiling-high wardrobes lining both walls. Each section was carefully labeled and organized by decade, occasion, and designer. Some pieces hadn't been worn in generations, while others were regularly rotated for public appearances and state functions. Her supervisor, Margaret Thornberry, stood near the central planning table with her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Margaret had been with the royal household for over 30 years and commanded respect from everyone who worked under her. She looked up from a thick folder of notes as Sarah approached. "Sarah, good morning. I need you to begin the final inventory check on sections C through F," Margaret said, her voice carrying the authority that came with decades of experience. "We must account for every piece that might be suitable for the coronation events. The schedule includes not just the ceremony itself, but the reception, the balcony appearance, and the evening celebration." Sarah nodded, understanding the magnitude of the task. The coronation would span an entire day, with multiple outfit changes required for different portions of the ceremony. Each look needed to be perfect, meaningful, and appropriate for the specific moment it would be worn. She began her work methodically, starting with Section C, which housed formal evening wear from the 1980s through early 2000s. Her trained eye quickly assessed each piece, checking for any signs of wear, stains, or needed alterations. Some gowns were immediately eliminated due to style or condition, while others were carefully noted as possibilities for the various events. As Sarah moved through the collection, she found herself thinking about the history contained within these walls. Every dress, every suit, every accessory had a story. Some had been worn to meet world leaders, others to charity galas that raised millions for important causes. Each piece represented a moment in time, a decision about how to present the monarchy to the world. The work was painstaking and required complete focus. Sarah documented each garment's condition, took detailed photographs, and made notes about potential styling options. Margaret had emphasized that no stone could be left unturned in their search for the perfect coronation wardrobe. By mid-morning, Sarah had made significant progress through Section C and moved on to Section D. This area contained pieces from an earlier era, including some stunning examples from the 1960s and 1970s. The craftsmanship in these older pieces amazed her. Hand-sewn beading, intricate embroidery, and fabrics that simply weren't made anymore showed the level of artistry that went into royal fashion. As she carefully examined a navy blue cocktail dress from 1973, Sarah noticed something unusual. Behind the main row of hanging garments, pressed against the very back wall, stood what appeared to be a small, separate wardrobe that she had never seen before. The wooden cabinet was painted white and looked much older than the modern storage systems used throughout the rest of the room. Curious, Sarah approached the cabinet and tried the handle. To her surprise, it opened easily, revealing a small collection of garments that seemed to have been forgotten by time. The pieces inside were clearly very old, but they had been protected by the closed cabinet and were in remarkable condition. The first item that caught her attention was a simple white dress that hung in the center of the cabinet. Even in the dim light, Sarah could see that this wasn't just any dress. The fabric had a subtle sheen that spoke of the finest silk, and the cut was elegant in its simplicity. As she gently lifted it from its hanger, she noticed a small tag sewn into the seam near the waist. Her heart began to race as she read the faded writing on the tag. It contained a date from 1953 and initials that Sarah recognized immediately from her extensive study of royal fashion history. This wasn't just any old dress that had been forgotten in storage. This was something much more significant. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she held the dress up to the light streaming in from the nearest window. The workmanship was extraordinary, even by royal standards. Every seam was perfect, every detail carefully considered. The neckline was modest but elegant, and the sleeves had a classic cut that would be flattering on almost any figure. But what made Sarah's breath catch in her throat was the realization of what this dress might represent. If her suspicions were correct, this wasn't just a beautiful vintage garment. This was a piece of history that had been lost and forgotten for decades, hidden away in this small cabinet where no one thought to look. She knew she needed to call Margaret immediately, but first she wanted to examine the dress more carefully. As she turned it around, checking every detail, she found additional evidence that supported her growing theory about the dress's significance. Small details in the construction, the specific type of silk used, and the overall style all pointed to the same conclusion. The dress appeared to have been made for a very specific occasion, one that would have required the absolute finest craftsmanship available at the time. The more Sarah studied it, the more convinced she became that this discovery could change everything about the coronation planning. Her phone buzzed with a text from Margaret asking about her progress. Sarah knew she had to make a decision. Should she continue her assigned inventory work and mention this discovery later, or should she immediately bring this potential treasure to Margaret's attention? The weight of the dress in her hands felt significant beyond its physical properties. If she was right about what this was, the implications would be enormous, not just for the coronation planning, but for royal history itself. This could be the kind of discovery that people would remember for generations. Sarah carefully hung the dress back in the cabinet, making sure it was positioned exactly as she had found it. She took several photographs with her phone, documenting its condition and location. Then she stepped back and took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She looked around the wardrobe room, seeing it with new eyes. If this one small cabinet had yielded such an incredible find, what other treasures might be hidden in the vast collection? How many pieces of history were waiting to be rediscovered in forgotten corners and overlooked storage areas? The morning light continued to stream through the windows, but now it seemed to illuminate more than just the regular collection of royal fashion. It highlighted the possibility that history could surprise them, even in the most familiar places. Sarah realized that her routine inventory check had just become something much more significant. As she walked back toward the main planning table where Margaret continued her work, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. What she did in the next few minutes could impact not just the coronation ceremony, but how the royal family would be remembered for this historic moment. Margaret looked up as Sarah approached, immediately noticing something different in her assistant's demeanor. "Sarah, you look like you've seen a ghost. Is everything all right with the inventory?" Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that once she spoke, there would be no going back. The discovery would set in motion a chain of events that could reshape the entire coronation planning process. But she also knew that some discoveries were too important to keep quiet, even if they complicated carefully laid plans. "Margaret, I need to show you something," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think I found something that changes everything." The older woman's eyebrows rose, and she set down her notes completely. In all her years of experience, Margaret had learned to trust Sarah's instincts. If her assistant thought something was significant enough to interrupt the crucial inventory work, it was worth investigating. "Show me," Margaret said simply, rising from her chair. As they walked back towards Section D, Sarah explained what she had found, being careful not to overstate her suspicions, but making it clear that this discovery required immediate attention. Margaret listened without interruption, her experienced mind already calculating the potential implications. When they reached the small white cabinet, Sarah opened it again and carefully lifted out the white dress. Margaret's sharp intake of breath confirmed that Sarah's instincts had been correct. This was indeed something extraordinary. "My dear girl," Margaret whispered, her usual composed demeanor cracking slightly, "I think you may have just made the discovery of a lifetime." The two women stood in the streaming sunlight, holding a piece of history that had been waiting patiently in the shadows for someone to recognize its importance. Neither of them could have imagined when they started their morning routine that by lunchtime, everything would change. The coronation planning was about to take a dramatic new direction, all because one careful assistant had noticed an unusual cabinet and had the courage to investigate what lay hidden inside. The treasure in the Queen's wardrobe was about to capture hearts around the world, but first, it had to capture the attention of those responsible for making royal history. Margaret Thornberry had seen many remarkable things during her 3 decades of service to the royal household, but as she held the white dress in the streaming palace sunlight, her hands shook with the magnitude of what Sarah had discovered. The fabric felt like liquid silk, and the construction spoke of a level of craftsmanship that belonged to a different era entirely. "We need to call Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne immediately," Margaret said, referring to the palace's chief historian and textile expert. "If this is what I think it might be, we're looking at something that could rewrite our understanding of royal fashion history." Sarah watched as Margaret carefully examined every detail of the dress, from the hand-stitched seams to the mother-of-pearl buttons that seemed to glow with an inner light. The older woman's eyes were sharp and focused, drawing on decades of experience to assess what they had found. Within an hour, Dr. Hawthorne arrived at the wardrobe department, accompanied by 2 assistants carrying specialized photography equipment and archival supplies. Elizabeth Hawthorne was a small, energetic woman in her mid-50s with silver-streaked auburn hair and an infectious enthusiasm for historical discoveries. She had written several acclaimed books on royal fashion and was considered the foremost expert on royal wardrobe collections. "Margaret, your message was quite intriguing," Dr. Hawthorne said as she approached the cabinet where the dress now hung separately from the other garments. "Sarah, congratulations on what appears to be a remarkable find." Dr. Hawthorne began her examination with the reverence of someone who understood that she might be touching a piece of living history. She pulled on white cotton gloves and carefully lifted the dress, studying the construction techniques, the quality of the materials, and, most importantly, the small identifying tags and markings that could confirm its provenance. "The silk is definitely from the early 1950s, she murmured, more to herself than to the others. "The weave pattern is consistent with the finest mills that supplied the royal household during that period. And this hand-stitching technique was used by only a select few couturiers of the era." As Dr. Hawthorne continued her examination, she discovered additional details that strengthened her growing theory about the dress's significance. Hidden inside one of the sleeves, she found a small piece of paper with notes written in faded blue ink. The handwriting was elegant and careful, detailing specific measurements and fitting notes. "Ladies, I believe we need to contact the private secretary's office immediately," Dr. Hawthorne announced after nearly an hour of careful study. "This dress appears to have been created for a very specific occasion in 1953, and if my research is correct, it has a story that could captivate the entire world." Margaret used the secure phone system to contact the private secretary's office, explaining the situation in careful, measured terms. Within minutes, they received word that a small meeting would be convened that afternoon to discuss the discovery and its potential implications for the upcoming coronation. As word of the discovery began to spread through the appropriate channels, Sarah found herself at the center of attention she had never expected. Palace officials, historians, and fashion experts began arriving throughout the day to examine the dress and offer their opinions on its significance and authenticity. Professor James Morrison, a royal historian from Oxford University, arrived in the early afternoon with a leather satchel full of archival photographs and documents. He had been researching royal fashion history for over 20 years and had written extensively about the wardrobe choices that had shaped public perception of the monarchy. The construction techniques are definitely consistent with the royal dressmakers of the early 1950s, Professor Morrison confirmed after his examination. But what makes this truly extraordinary is the story it appears to tell. This wasn't just any dress. This was created for what might have been one of the most important moments in modern royal history. As the afternoon progressed, Dr. Hawthorne worked with her team to create detailed photographic documentation of every aspect of the dress. They used specialized lighting and high-resolution cameras to capture the intricate beadwork, the precise stitching, and the subtle details that spoke of master craftsmanship. Meanwhile, Margaret and Sarah continued their inventory work in the other sections of the wardrobe, but their focus had shifted dramatically. The discovery of the white dress had opened up new possibilities for the coronation wardrobe that no one had previously considered. Sarah, your attention to detail and willingness to investigate something unusual may have given us the centerpiece of the entire coronation ceremony, Margaret said as they worked together to document other pieces in the collection. Sometimes the most significant discoveries come from the most unexpected places. The small white cabinet had yielded other treasures as well. Behind the white dress, they found a matching handbag made from the same silk fabric, a pair of white gloves that appeared to be sized to match the dress, and a simple but elegant pearl necklace that complemented the overall ensemble perfectly. Each piece was examined with the same careful attention to detail, and each one reinforced the growing belief that this wasn't just a random collection of vintage clothing, but a complete outfit that had been carefully planned and preserved for a specific purpose. As the day wore on, the implications of the discovery began to ripple through the palace hierarchy. Phone calls were made to Clarence House, to Windsor Castle, and to other key members of the royal household. Everyone wanted to understand what had been found and how it might impact the carefully choreographed coronation plans. Lady Catherine Pemberton, the senior lady-in-waiting, arrived at the wardrobe department in the late afternoon. She was a tall, elegant woman in her 60s who had served the royal family for over 20 years and was known for her impeccable taste and deep understanding of royal protocol. Margaret, Dr. Hawthorne, I understand you've made quite a discovery today, Lady Catherine said as she approached the area where the dress was being examined. The private secretary has asked me to assess the situation and provide recommendations on how we might proceed. Dr. Hawthorne presented her findings to Lady Catherine, explaining the evidence that supported their theory about the dress's origins and significance. She showed the construction details, the archival documents she had been able to locate, and the matching accessories that had been found with the dress. If we're correct about this dress's history, Dr. Hawthorne explained, it represents a connection to a pivotal moment in royal history. It's not just a beautiful garment. It's a symbol of continuity, tradition, and the enduring nature of a monarchy. Lady Catherine listened carefully, asking detailed questions about the condition of the dress, the accuracy of the historical research, and the practical considerations of potentially incorporating it into the coronation ceremony. Her years of experience had taught her to balance sentiment with practicality, and she needed to understand all aspects of the situation before making recommendations. The condition appears to be remarkable for a garment of this age, Lady Catherine observed as she examined the dress herself. The silk has maintained its structure, the color is still clear and beautiful, and the overall construction seems sound. From a purely practical standpoint, it appears that this could actually be worn. This was a crucial consideration. Many historical royal garments were too fragile to be worn, even for special occasions. They could be displayed or referenced, but they couldn't actually serve their original function. The fact that this dress appeared to be in wearable condition opened up possibilities that wouldn't otherwise exist. Sarah watched the discussion with fascination, still somewhat in shock that her routine morning inventory had led to this extraordinary situation. She had always loved history, but she had never imagined that she might play a role in uncovering it. Margaret pulled Sarah aside as the experts continued their discussions. "You should be very proud of what you've accomplished today," she said quietly. "But I want you to understand that this discovery is now much larger than just the two of us. There will be many people involved in deciding how to proceed, and the final decision will be made at the highest levels." As evening approached, temporary security measures were put in place to protect the dress while longer-term decisions were being made. The small white cabinet was moved to a climate-controlled storage room with restricted access, and round-the-clock security was assigned to monitor the area. Dr. Hawthorne spent the evening reviewing her archival research, cross-referencing the evidence from the dress with historical documents and photographs. She wanted to build the strongest possible case for her theory about the dress's significance before presenting her final conclusions to the decision-makers. Professor Morrison returned to Oxford to consult additional archives and historical records. He had contacts at several museums and private collections who might have relevant information about royal fashion from the early 1950s. Sarah finished her day with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had started her morning expecting to complete a routine inventory check, and instead she had made a discovery that could impact one of the most important royal ceremonies in generations. As she walked home through the London streets, Sarah thought about the chain of events that had led to this moment. If she hadn't noticed the unusual cabinet, if she hadn't been curious enough to investigate, if she hadn't trusted her instincts about the significance of what she found, the dress might have remained hidden for many more years. The next morning would bring new developments and new challenges. Decisions would need to be made about whether to incorporate the dress into the coronation ceremony, and if so, how to do it in a way that honored both its historical significance and the needs of the modern ceremony. But for now, Sarah was content to know that she had played a small but crucial role in uncovering a piece of history that had been patiently waiting for someone to recognize its importance. The treasure in the Queen's wardrobe was beginning to reveal its secrets, and the story it would tell could capture hearts around the world. The discovery was about to transform from a private revelation to a public phenomenon, but first, it would need to survive the careful scrutiny of those who would decide its fate. The morning after Sarah's extraordinary discovery brought an unusual level of activity to Buckingham Palace. Word of the find had reached the highest levels of the royal household overnight, and by dawn, a series of crucial meetings had been scheduled to determine the next steps. Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne arrived at the palace at 7 in the morning, carrying a thick folder of research that she had compiled through the night. Her investigation had uncovered details that confirmed her initial theory about the dress's significance, but had also revealed aspects of the story that no one had expected. "The evidence is overwhelming," Dr. Hawthorne announced to Margaret and Sarah as they gathered in the secure storage room where the dress was now housed. This dress was created in 1953 by Norman Hartnell, the same couturier who designed the coronation gown for Queen Elizabeth II. But this wasn't just any dress from his workshop. This was something very special. She opened her folder and spread out photocopies of archival documents, sketches, and photographs that told an incredible story. The white dress had been commissioned as a backup option for a crucial appearance during the 1953 coronation celebrations, but due to timing and protocol decisions, it had never been worn. According to these documents, Hartnell created this dress as an alternative for the balcony appearance after the coronation ceremony, Dr. Hawthorne explained. The original plan was to have a simpler, more accessible look for that moment when the newly crowned queen would greet the people. But at the last minute, the decision was made to continue wearing the coronation gown for the balcony appearance. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a beautiful vintage dress. This was a piece of royal fashion history that had been created for one of the most watched moments in modern royal history, but had never fulfilled its intended purpose. Margaret studied the archival photographs that showed Hartnell's original sketches and notes. The attention to detail was extraordinary, with specific notations about how the dress should photograph under different lighting conditions and how it would look when viewed from the balcony by the crowds below. The symbolism is perfect for our current situation, Margaret observed. A dress that was created for a coronation but never got its moment to shine, now discovered just in time for another coronation ceremony. It's almost as if it was meant to be. Sir James Fitzwilliam, the Lord Chamberlain, arrived at 9 o'clock for a private viewing of the dress and a briefing on the research findings. He was a distinguished man in his early 60s who had overseen many royal ceremonies and understood the delicate balance between tradition and innovation that defines successful royal events. Dr. Hawthorne, your research is fascinating, Sir James said after examining the evidence. But I need to understand the practical implications. If we were to consider incorporating this dress into the coronation ceremony, what would that entail? The question sparked a detailed discussion about the various possibilities. The dress could be worn for one of the less formal coronation events, such as a private reception or a charitable appearance. It could be featured in a special exhibition that would run alongside the coronation celebrations. Or, most dramatically, it could potentially be worn for a significant public moment during the ceremony itself. Each option carried different implications for planning, security, and public messaging. Sir James listened carefully to all the possibilities, taking detailed notes and asking probing questions about the logistics and potential complications of each approach. The condition assessment will be crucial, he noted. We need to know not just that the dress looks beautiful in storage, but that it can withstand the demands of a major public appearance. We'll need a full conservation analysis. Dr. Patricia Reynolds, the palace's chief textile conservator, was summoned to conduct a comprehensive examination of the dress's condition. She arrived with equipment that would allow her to assess the structural integrity of every component without causing any damage to the historic garment. The silk is in remarkable condition, Dr. Reynolds reported after her initial assessment. The fibers have maintained their strength, and there's minimal fading or deterioration. However, I'll need several more hours to complete a full analysis, including stress testing of the seams and closures. While Dr. Reynolds worked, the discussion turned to the broader implications of the discovery. The story of finding a lost coronation dress had all the elements of a modern fairy tale, and everyone involved understood that the public would be fascinated by the narrative. We need to consider how this story will be received by the media and the public, Sir James observed. If we decide to incorporate the dress into the ceremony, the backstory becomes part of the coronation narrative. That could be wonderfully positive, but it also means we lose some control over the message. Lady Catherine Pemberton joined the discussion, bringing her deep understanding of public relations and royal protocol. She had spent the morning consulting with the palace's communications team about the potential implications of the discovery. The preliminary reaction from our communications colleagues is quite positive, she reported. The story has emotional resonance. The idea of a forgotten dress finally getting its moment to shine speaks to themes of patience, tradition, and unexpected discoveries. It's the kind of narrative that could capture public imagination. However, she also raised important practical considerations. If the dress were to be worn during the coronation ceremony, extensive preparations would be needed. Fittings would have to be conducted in absolute secrecy. Alternative plans would need to be developed in case of last-minute problems, and the security implications would need to be thoroughly assessed. Sarah listened to these high-level discussions with a mixture of pride and nervousness. Her discovery had set in motion a complex decision-making process that involved some of the most senior officials in the royal household. The simple act of opening an overlooked cabinet had created ripple effects that now reached the highest levels of palace management. Margaret included Sarah in the discussions, recognizing that her detailed knowledge of the discovery and her careful documentation had been crucial to the investigation. Sarah's attention to detail and thorough approach to the inventory gave us the foundation for everything we've learned today, Margaret explained to the assembled officials. By afternoon, Dr. Reynolds had completed her conservation analysis with encouraging results. The dress is structurally sound and could definitely be worn for a significant public appearance, she announced. The silk has aged beautifully. The construction techniques have held up remarkably well, and, with minimal conservation work, it could be restored to full wearability. This news energized the entire discussion. The possibility of actually using the dress for the coronation ceremony moved from theoretical to practical. Sir James asked Dr. Reynolds to prepare a detailed conservation plan that would outline the steps needed to ensure the dress would be ready for any potential use. We also need to consider the matching accessories, Dr. Hawthorne added. The handbag, gloves, and pearls that were found with the dress complete the ensemble and add to its historical authenticity. If we use the dress, we should consider incorporating these pieces as well. The afternoon brought another crucial development. Professor Morrison called from Oxford with news that he had located additional archival materials that provided even more context for the dress's creation and intended use. His research had uncovered personal letters and diary entries that revealed the thinking behind the original design decisions. The dress was specifically designed to convey accessibility and approachability, Professor Morrison explained via video conference. Hartnell's notes indicate that he wanted to create something that would photograph beautifully, but also signal a connection between the monarchy and the people. The simplicity of the design was intentional, meant to contrast with the formal grandeur of the coronation gown. This revelation added another layer to the potential symbolism of using the dress for the current coronation. The themes of accessibility and connection with the people were exactly the values that the current royal family wanted to emphasize in their public appearances. As the day progressed, the momentum toward incorporating the dress into the coronation ceremony continued to build. The historical significance was undeniable, the condition was excellent, and the symbolism was perfect for the current moment. But the final decision would need to be made at the very highest level. Sir James scheduled a meeting for the following morning with the most senior palace officials to present all the findings and recommendations. The discovery that had begun with Sarah's curiosity had grown into a potential game-changing element of the coronation ceremony. Whatever decision is made, Sir James concluded the day's discussions, this discovery has already enriched our understanding of royal history and added a wonderful new chapter to the story of the coronation traditions. Sarah walked home that evening knowing that her life had changed forever. In 2 days, she had gone from being an assistant wardrobe keeper to being the person who had uncovered one of the most significant royal fashion discoveries in decades. The treasure in the Queen's wardrobe was now poised to capture the attention of the entire world. The next day would bring the final decision about whether the forgotten dress would finally get its moment to shine on one of the most watched stages in the world. The story was about to reach its climax, and Sarah would be there to witness history being made. The decisive meeting took place in the blue drawing room at Buckingham Palace at 9 o'clock sharp on a crisp London morning. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting patterns on the ornate carpet where some of the most senior figures in the royal household had gathered to make a decision that could reshape the entire coronation ceremony. Sir James Fitzwilliam presided over the meeting, with Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne presenting her complete research findings to the assembled group. Lady Catherine Pemberton sat alongside the palace's chief communications advisor, while Margaret Thornberry and Sarah Mitchell were present to answer any detailed questions about the discovery itself. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to make a decision about one of the most extraordinary discoveries in recent royal history, Sir James began. Dr. Hawthorne, please present your final assessment. Dr. Hawthorne rose and walked to an easel where enlarged photographs of the dress and its historical documentation were displayed. Her presentation was thorough and compelling, weaving together the threads of evidence that proved beyond doubt that this was a genuine Hartnell creation intended for the 1953 coronation celebrations. The dress represents a perfect bridge between past and present, she concluded. It carries the craftsmanship and attention to detail that defined royal fashion in the 1950s, while its never-worn condition makes it uniquely suitable for contemporary use. More importantly, its original purpose aligns perfectly with the symbolic goals of our current coronation ceremony. The communications advisor, James Hartford, presented his analysis of the potential public reaction to incorporating the dress into the ceremony. His team had conducted focus groups and analyzed social media trends to predict how the story would be received. The narrative elements are extraordinarily strong, Hartford reported. The discovery by a dedicated palace staff member, the connection to coronation history, and the fairy tale quality of a forgotten dress finally getting its moment all resonate powerfully with our target audiences. Our preliminary research suggests this could become one of the most beloved aspects of the entire ceremony. However, Hartford also presented the potential risks. Using a previously unknown historical garment would require extensive media preparation to ensure the story was told accurately and effectively. There would also be increased scrutiny of every detail, with fashion experts and historians worldwide analyzing every aspect of the dress and its provenance. Lady Catherine addressed the practical considerations. The timeline for the coronation was already extremely tight, and incorporating the dress would require additional fittings, security protocols, and backup plans. However, her team had worked through the logistics overnight and determined that it could be accomplished without disrupting other aspects of the ceremony planning. The dress would be perfect for the private reception that follows the main ceremony, Lady Catherine suggested. This would allow for a more intimate setting where the historical significance could be properly appreciated, while still providing an opportunity for the dress to be photographed and seen by key dignitaries. Margaret Thornberry was asked to assess the wardrobe department's capacity to handle the additional requirements. Despite the compressed timeline, she was confident that her team could manage the necessary alterations and preparations without compromising other aspects of the coronation wardrobe. We have the expertise and the facilities to ensure the dress is perfectly prepared, Margaret stated. Sarah's discovery has given us enough time to do this properly, and our team is excited about the opportunity to work with such a historically significant piece. The most crucial moment came when the private secretary announced that the key decision-maker had been briefed on the discovery and was very interested in learning more. A private presentation had been scheduled for later that morning, where the dress itself would be seen and the full implications could be considered. This is an unprecedented situation, the private secretary noted. We have never had the opportunity to incorporate a newly discovered historical piece into a major ceremony. The decision will ultimately rest on whether the dress feels right for this particular moment in royal history. As the formal meeting concluded, Sarah found herself selected to be part of the small group that would present the dress during the private viewing. Her role as the discoverer, combined with her detailed knowledge of the find, made her presence essential to tell the complete story. The private presentation took place in the Chinese drawing room, a more intimate space that allowed for a detailed examination of the dress and its historical context. Sarah felt her nervousness building as she helped Dr. Hawthorne arrange the dress on a specially designed display stand that would allow it to be seen from all angles. When the door opened and the key decision-maker entered, Sarah was struck by how the entire atmosphere in the room shifted. Everyone present understood that they were witnessing a potentially historic moment, when a forgotten piece of royal history might be chosen to play a role in creating new royal history. The examination was thorough and thoughtful. Every detail of the dress was considered, from the quality of Hartnell's original craftsmanship to the symbolism of its rediscovery. Questions were asked about the conservation work, the historical research, and the practical implications of wearing a 70-year-old garment for a major public appearance. "Tell me about the moment you found it," came the request to Sarah, who had been quiet throughout most of the presentation. Sarah described her morning inventory work, the unusual cabinet, and her growing realization that she had discovered something extraordinary. "I just knew it was special," Sarah explained. The quality of the work, the way it had been carefully preserved, everything about it spoke of importance. I'm so glad I trusted my instincts to investigate further. The decision-maker spent several minutes examining the dress in complete silence, considering all the factors that would influence this choice. The room was quiet except for the soft ticking of an antique clock on the mantelpiece. Finally, the verdict came with a smile that lit up the entire room. I think this dress has been waiting 70 years for exactly this moment. Let's give it the opportunity to fulfill its original purpose. The room erupted in quiet celebration as the implications of the decision sank in. The forgotten dress would indeed have its moment to shine, and it would happen on one of the most watched stages in the world. Sarah felt tears of joy welling up in her eyes as she realized that her discovery would now become part of royal history. The rest of the day was a whirlwind of planning and preparation. The dress was immediately moved to the most secure conservation facility in the palace, where Dr. Reynolds and her team began the delicate work of preparing it for its historic debut. Every thread would be examined, every seam reinforced if necessary, and every detail perfected. Margaret assembled a special team from the wardrobe department to handle all aspects of the dress's preparation. Fittings were scheduled in absolute secrecy, with only the most trusted staff members allowed access to the process. Security protocols were enhanced to ensure that no details of the dress's planned use would leak to the media before the official announcement. Dr. Hawthorne began working with the palace's official historians to prepare the authoritative account of the dress's discovery and significance that would be released to accompany its debut. The story needed to be accurate, engaging, and properly contextualized within the broader narrative of royal fashion history. James Hartford and his communications team started planning the media strategy that would introduce the dress to the world. The announcement would need to be timed perfectly to maximize positive coverage while ensuring that the story didn't overshadow other important aspects of the coronation ceremony. Sarah found herself at the center of all these preparations, consulted regularly about details of the discovery, and asked to verify facts for the historical record. Her life had been completely transformed by her willingness to investigate an unusual cabinet during a routine morning inventory. That evening, as Sarah walked home through the London streets, she reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had begun with her simple curiosity. In just 3 days, she had gone from being an anonymous palace employee to being the person who had made one of the most significant royal discoveries in recent memory. The dress that had waited patiently in a forgotten cabinet for 70 years was now just weeks away from finally fulfilling its intended purpose. It would be worn during a royal coronation ceremony, photographed by the world's media, and remembered as a symbol of the unexpected treasures that could be found when someone cared enough to look. The story was about to reach its public climax, but for Sarah, the most meaningful part had already happened. She had trusted her instincts, investigated something unusual, and uncovered a piece of history that would now touch millions of lives around the world. The treasure in the Queen's wardrobe was about to capture hearts globally, but it had already captured the heart of the quiet woman who had been brave enough to open a forgotten cabinet and discover the extraordinary beauty waiting inside. The morning of the coronation dawned bright and clear, with London bathed in golden sunlight that seemed to promise something magical was about to unfold. Across the city, millions of people prepared to witness history, while in the private chambers of Buckingham Palace, a very special piece of that history was being carefully prepared for its long-awaited debut. Sarah Mitchell arrived at the palace before sunrise, her heart racing with excitement and nervous energy. Today, the dress she had discovered would finally fulfill the purpose for which it had been created 70 years earlier. The white silk gown that had waited patiently in a forgotten cabinet was about to step into the spotlight of the most watched royal ceremony in decades. Margaret Thornberry and her team had worked tirelessly in the weeks leading up to this moment. The dress had been meticulously conserved, with Dr. Patricia Reynolds ensuring that every thread was secure and every detail perfect. The alterations had been minimal, mostly adjustments to ensure a perfect fit, while preserving the historical integrity of Hartnell's original design. "Sarah, I want you to be present during the final preparations," Margaret announced as they gathered in the specially prepared dressing room. "Your discovery made this moment possible, and you should witness the culmination of your extraordinary find." The dress hung on a custom-made hanger, protected by museum-quality archival materials. In the soft morning light filtering through the curtained windows, the white silk seemed to glow with an inner radiance that spoke of its royal heritage and its moment of destiny. Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne arrived with a leather portfolio containing the final historical documentation that would accompany the dress's public debut. Her research had uncovered even more fascinating details about the original creation, including sketches and notes that revealed Norman Hartnell's vision for how the dress should be presented to the world. "Today, this dress completes a journey that began in 1953, Dr. Hawthorne said as she watched the final preparations. Hartnell designed it to be seen by the people, to represent the accessible face of monarchy, and to create a connection between tradition and modernity. 70 years later, it will finally achieve that purpose. The matching accessories that had been found with the dress were also prepared with careful attention to detail. The white silk handbag had been gently cleaned and its delicate beading restored to its original brilliance. The white gloves were examined by textile experts and found to be in remarkably good condition, requiring only minimal conservation work. The pearl necklace that completed the ensemble had been authenticated by jewelry experts and determined to be a piece of exceptional quality from the early 1950s. Its simple elegance perfectly complemented the understated sophistication of the dress, and together they created an outfit that epitomized the refined taste of the Hartnell atelier. As the morning progressed, the excitement in the palace continued to build. The coronation ceremony itself would be magnificent, but those involved in the preparation knew that the afternoon reception where the dress would make its debut would be equally historic. The guest list included heads of state, royal family members, and dignitaries from around the world, all of whom would witness the dress's first public appearance. James Hartford and his communications team had prepared a comprehensive media package about the dress's discovery and significance. The story would be released simultaneously across multiple platforms immediately after the dress made its first public appearance, ensuring maximum global coverage of this remarkable tale. "The narrative elements are perfect," Hartford explained to the assembled team. "We have the dedicated palace employee who made the discovery, the lost piece of royal history, the master craftsmanship of a legendary designer, and the fairy tale ending of the dress finally getting its moment to shine. This story will resonate with people around the world." Lady Catherine Pemberton arrived to oversee the final details of the afternoon reception planning. The dress would be worn for approximately 2 hours, allowing for extensive photography and interaction with key guests. The schedule had been carefully planned to ensure that the dress would be seen in optimal lighting conditions and from the most flattering angles. "The symbolic value cannot be overstated," Lady Catherine observed. "This dress represents continuity with the past while embracing the future. It shows that treasures can be found in the most unexpected places, and that history is always alive and ready to surprise us." The most moving moment of the morning came when Sarah was invited to assist with the final presentation of the dress. As she carefully adjusted the pearl necklace and arranged the silk handbag, she thought about the incredible journey that had brought them all to this moment. "I never imagined when I opened that cabinet that it would lead to this," Sarah said quietly. "I was just doing my job, trying to be thorough with the inventory. But I'm so grateful that I trusted my instincts and investigated something that seemed unusual." Margaret smiled at her protégé's modesty. "Sarah, your discovery has added something truly magical to this coronation ceremony. You've given the world a story that will be remembered for generations, and you've allowed a masterpiece of royal fashion to finally achieve its intended purpose." As the coronation ceremony began in Westminster Abbey, Sarah and The wardrobe team watched on television from the palace, knowing that their moment was still to come. The formal ceremony was magnificent, with traditions spanning centuries playing out before a global audience of billions. But they knew that their part of the story would be equally significant. The afternoon reception would provide a different kind of magic, one that spoke to the personal touches and unexpected discoveries that make royal history so fascinating. The moment finally arrived in the early afternoon. As the dress made its way from the preparation rooms to the reception hall, Sarah felt a mixture of pride and amazement that something she had found in a forgotten cabinet was now part of one of the most important days in recent royal history. The reception hall had been decorated with white roses and lilies, creating a perfect backdrop for the dress's debut. As the doors opened and the ensemble made its first public appearance, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Gasps of admiration filled the room as guests took in the simple elegance of the Hartnell creation. The dress moved beautifully, its silk flowing gracefully with every step. The matching accessories completed the look perfectly, creating an ensemble that was both historically significant and thoroughly contemporary in its impact. Photographers captured every angle as the dress fulfilled its original purpose, representing the monarchy to distinguished guests from around the world. The white silk seemed to glow in the afternoon light streaming through the palace windows, and the simple elegance of the design spoke to the timeless nature of truly masterful craftsmanship. The story of the dress's discovery quickly spread through the reception as guests learned about Sarah's find and the remarkable research that had confirmed its significance. Foreign dignitaries, royal family members, and distinguished guests all wanted to hear the details of how a routine inventory check had uncovered such an extraordinary treasure. "It's a perfect metaphor for the monarchy itself," observed the French ambassador. "Traditional values and timeless elegance, but with the ability to surprise and delight in unexpected ways." The German president's wife was equally impressed. "The fact that this dress waited 70 years for its moment speaks to the enduring nature of true beauty and craftsmanship. It's a wonderful addition to the coronation celebrations." As the afternoon progressed, the dress performed flawlessly. The conservation work had been so thorough that there were no concerns about its durability, and the fit was so perfect that it moved as if it had been created yesterday rather than 7 decades ago. Social media around the world began buzzing with images and stories about the dress. The official announcement of its discovery and significance was met with overwhelming positive response, with people celebrating both the find itself and the person who had made it possible. Sarah watched from a discreet position as the dress she had discovered captured the attention and admiration of dignitaries from around the globe. Her simple act of curiosity had led to this moment of international recognition for a masterpiece of royal fashion. As the reception concluded and the dress was carefully returned to conservation storage, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary week that had transformed her life. She had begun as an anonymous palace employee and ended as the person who had made one of the most significant royal discoveries in recent memory. The dress had finally achieved its purpose, representing the monarchy to the world and creating a connection between past and present that would be remembered for generations. But more than that, it had proven that treasures could be found in the most unexpected places by people who cared enough to look. Margaret found Sarah as the day's events were winding down. "You know, Sarah, this is just the beginning. The dress will likely be featured in exhibitions, documentaries, and history books for decades to come. Your discovery has become part of the permanent record of royal history." As Sarah walked home that evening, she passed crowds of people still celebrating the coronation. Many were discussing the beautiful white dress and the remarkable story of its discovery. She smiled to herself, knowing that she had played a small but crucial role in creating a moment that had captured hearts around the world. The treasure in the Queen's wardrobe had indeed won hearts globally, but it had started by capturing the curiosity and attention of one dedicated woman who had been brave enough to investigate something unusual. The forgotten dress had waited 70 years for its moment to shine, and when that moment came, it illuminated not just itself, but the power of curiosity, dedication, and the belief that extraordinary discoveries can come from the most ordinary circumstances. The story of Sarah's find would be told and retold for generations, inspiring others to look more carefully, investigate more thoroughly, and trust their instincts when something seems special. The coronation had been magnificent in all its planned splendor, but it had been made magical by an unexpected treasure that proved history is always ready to surprise those who take the time to discover its secrets.